In this tutorial, we will have a look how we can create player chase as you can see, and we will stop our enemy game object once the enemy game object is too much close. And we also gonna have a look on how we can rotate our enemy game object in the direction player is going. So let's get into that. And I want to thank Rio. I want to thank Rio for taking my membership on my Patreon. It's really helped me a lot. So if you want to do if you guys want to do that, you can go in on my Patreon page, and also the project file will be on my Patreon page, so you can go and check that out. So without, let's create our enemy. So I'm gonna go to project tab, then assets. I have it over here. I will leave a link in the description. You can go and check that out, or you can check all of these sprites. So I'm gonna click right over here. So I have it. I'm gonna select this one. So let's drag it into the scene view or in hierarchy. And if to focus on that, let's select all of the skins like this head and two hands, and let's drag it one by one into the hierarchy or in the scene view. And let's select all of them by holding down shift, go over to transform, right click and reset the transform. And what we want to do, we want to create a empty game object, and we will make all of these hand, bodies, backpack, uh, a child of that game object. So in order to do that, so let's right click on hierarchy, or let's hit this plus icon, create an empty game object. Let's call this game object something like enemy, and let's go to transform. Make sure you just right click and reset the transform, and select all of this skin by holding down shift and just place it top of this enemy game object. Sorry, I select all of them by holding down shift and just place it top of this enemy game object. Now if we select this enemy game object and select this move tool, we can move it anywhere in this scene view we can. So I'm gonna reset the transform to 0 0 0 in the XY. And what we want to do now, we have to arrange this. So I'm gonna select the backpack. Let's drag it somewhere around here, and let's select both of these hand by holding down shift, and let's move it somewhere around here. I'm gonna select the hat. Let's drag it over here. And what we want to do now, I'm gonna select the first hand, the left hand. I'm gonna move it over here, and let's select this one and move it all the way to the right section. So I'm gonna select both of these hand. Let's drag it a little bit. So what we have to do, we're gonna as you can see, the hat, it seems like it's behind of our hand, so we need to assign with some layers. So in order to assign with some layers, or we want to drag this hand behind of our head a layer. So in order to do that, go to sprite renderer and then additional settings, sorting layer. So just click on that, click on add sorting layer, and hit this plus icon and name some layers. Like for this head, I already have created, and I drag it the head and the gun all the way up, and the backpack all the way behind, as you can see. So I have created for hand, head and gun, and also for a backpack. So I already have created. So now let's go to this backpack and let's assign with that a backpack sorting layer. So I'm gonna sorting layers for this backpack, and let's select this head. I'm gonna assign with head sorting layer, and let's select both of this hand by holding down shift, and let's assign with hand sorting layer. Now it's fine. And what we have to do right now, I'm gonna drag it somewhere. I'm gonna select the right hand. Let's move it somewhere around here. Let's select the left one. And what we have to do right now, we need to drag a weapon or the gun. So I'm gonna go to sprites one more time. I have it over here. I will leave a link in the description of this. All of this sprite that I'm going to use in my in this project will be available in the description, so you can go and check that out. So I'm going to select this weapon. So let's select that and drag it into this in view or into the hierarchy. I'm going to select this enemy. I'm going to drag it all the way in up in hierarchy so I can see all the time. And this is our weapon. It seems like it's pretty big. So let's scale down this gun or this uh, weapon a little bit down. So let's do 7.7 in the x and zero point 0.7 in the y, zero point 0.7 in the x and 0.7 in the y. And what we have to do now, as you can see, it seems like the gun is behind of our hand, so we're gonna drag it in top of our hand. So let's select this weapon. I already have created an gun sorting layer, which as you seen, so I'm gonna assign with that gun. Sorry, not new, that gun. And what we have to do right now, we need to select this weapon or this gun and drag it onto this enemy game object. So if we just select this game object and just move around in the scene view, as you can see, indeed the gun is also going with it, as you can see. So I hope you get the idea of this. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna move it somewhere around here. And basically you have to make child of that you have to make this gun child of this enemy game object, so you can move enemy game object anywhere you want, so the gun will also gonna move with it. And let's create a script for chasing our player game object. So if I select this enemy and drag it right over here, and make sure what you have to do, select the enemy game object and make this one prefab. So select the enemy game object first and drag it onto this prefab folder or into this assets folder. Now it's turned blue, basically means prefab, so I'm going to drag it some into that prefab folder. And what we have to do now, let's create an script to chase our player game object. So in order to do that, let's go to project tab, then assets, right click on assets, then create C# script, name it to something like enemy. I already have created right over here, I have. So I'm going to select the enemy game object and let's select this script and drag it to this add component section and double click that to open up in Visual Studio quickly. So as you can see, by default we have start and update function, as you can see right over here. So what we want to do, we want to create a circle around this enemy game object. So I'm going to select this enemy game object, I'm going to drag it little bit further away from this player game object, something somewhere around here. So what we want to create an circle around this enemy game object, and if this player get inside of the circle of this enemy game object, then this enemy game object should chase this player game object. So in order to create our circle, so let's open up our script or let's go to the script. And in order to do that, we have to use this physics sorry physics 2d physics 2d dot overlap circle. And this function right over here, make sure you just do that, overlap circle. So this function right over here, physics 2d dot overlap circle, will as a first argument, it will take the position from where you want to create the circle. So we want to create the circle from center position of our enemy game object. And the second thing, it will take the radius of that circle. And the third thing, it will take the game layer mask, basically which game object you want to target. So in our case, we want to target this player game object, so that's why as a layer mask we're gonna choose this player game object. So we need assign those variable, we need radius of that circle as well as we need a layer mask, basically which game object we want to target. So let's make this one comment by double slash. Let's go to top of our class. So first thing, so we want to create the circle from center position of our enemy game object, so we don't need any position reference, but we do need the radius of that circle. So let's make a public float, let's call this one attack radius, and by default I'm going to set it to something like 5f. 5f, and make sure you just close that off with semicolon, and make sure you just make this one public, so you don't need to come to the script and change this value over again and again. And the second thing we need, oh sorry, the third thing we need is layer mask. So let's create a public layer mask. Let's call this one to target layer or attack layer, and make sure you just close that up with semicolon, control s to save your code. Now let's move to Unity. So we need to assign those variable first. The first thing, it's gonna take the radius, and we just as specified, which is by default we have given 5, but we can adjust upon it over here. So we forgot to add some components. So first thing, we will add up a rigid body, and we will set it to kinematic, because for if we set it to kinematic, it's not gonna fall down due to our gravity. And the second thing we need is a box collider for collision detection, so we need to attach those components. So let's do that. So as you can see, attack radius by default we have given 5, and the target layer is selected nothing. So we're gonna choose player. So before we choose player, we need to assign this player game object as a player layer. So in order to do that, select the player game object, go over to inspector. In the top right you can see layer, and it says default. So just click on that and click on add layer. Name the layer what you want. So I already have named it right over here, so I'm gonna go back to that game object, basically go back to that player game object and assign this player game object as a player layer. So go to inspector. In the top right you can see layer, and it says default. So let's assign this player game object as a player layer. So we're gonna choose this player, and I'm gonna know this game object only, and just go to overrides and make sure you just click on this apply all. Apply all, so whatever changes you made, it will be saved into that prefab as well. So we're gonna select this enemy game object. Now as a target layer we will choose our player. So this the circle will only gonna check for this player game object now. And just what we want to do right now, uh, let's click on this add component. So first thing, we're gonna add a rigid body 2D, and we will set this one to kinematic, so it's not gonna fall down due to our gravity. And the second thing, it says collision detection, so let's choose this one continuous. And the second thing, we're gonna add a box collider for collision detection. So let's click on this add component and find over there by typing box collider 2D, and let's edit the collider as the size of our sprites. So let's make the size of this, and it's done. And make sure you just go to overrides and click on this apply all. So this component and this script will also gonna be attached into this prefab of this enemy game object. Means whatever changes we made, it will be saved into that prefab of this enemy game object as well. So let's click on this overrides and click on apply all. And now if we double click that to open up in Visual Studio our script, let's remove these two slashes from right over here. So first thing, it will take the position from where we want to create the circle. So let's pass our transform dot position. Basically transform dot position right over here means current position of our enemy game object, means this center position of our enemy. Basically we just moving over to this transform, then position. And the second thing, it will take the radius, so let's pass our red attack radius. And the third thing, it will take the layer mark, so let's pass our target layer, and make sure you just close that off with semicolon. So as a target layer we have chosen our player, so the circle will be created from center position or current position of this enemy game object with this much of radius, and it's only gonna check for our player game object. So this function right over here, physics 2d dot overlap circle, so this gonna be true or false depending upon if the circle is really, if the circle we created it's really colliding with this player game object. So that so this right over here function we're gonna give us a true value, else it will give us a false value. So we're gonna store this into a collider 2D. Basically it's gonna collide, the circle will collide with that player game object or not. So let's store into a collider 2D variable. So let's store that collider 2D, and let's call this one hit info or hit. Let's set equal to this. So this hit can be true or false depending upon if the circle is really colliding with this player game object or not. If it's, then we need to chase our player game object. So what we want to do in the next slide, we will check if hit is equals to true, or you can leave it like this, it's also means true, and make some curly brackets. So if hit is true, basically means the circle is really colliding with this player game object. So in that situation, this enemy should chase this player game object after this player game object. So for now, let's print out a message in the console if it's really working or not. So let's print out. For printing out, let's type debug.log and make first bracket, and in quotation you can type any message you want to see. So I'm gonna say something like player in attack range, and make sure you just close that up with semicolon and control S to save your code. And if we just move over to Unity now, we should able to see that message just gonna pop up right after the game start, or right after we collide with that circle of this enemy game object what we recently created, but the problem is that, as you can see, we not able to see our circle. So it would be pretty fine if we are able to see our circle. So in order to see or to draw, let's go to our step and let's go to our bottom of our enemy class. You can do it anywhere you want. So I'm gonna go in the bottom, and we have to use this on draw gizmo selected function. Make sure you just do that as I did right over here, type the same thing, or else it's not gonna able to do or to draw the circle. So make sure you just do that. Basically this is right over here, unity inbuilt function, and it just draw what we want to draw. So in order to draw, we have to use this gizmos dot draw where sphere, and this right over here as a first argument, it will take the position from where we want to draw. So let's pass our transform dot position, means current position or center position of our enemy game object. And the second thing, it will take the radius. So let's pass our attack radius, and make sure you just close that up with semicolon. And we can also choose a color for our circle to before we draw the circle, to in order to change the color or select a specific color, we have to use this gizmos dot color, and we will set to any color we like. So I'm gonna set it to color dot something like yellow. You can set any color you want or you would like to draw with that color, and make sure you just also close that off with semicolon, control S to save your code. Now let's move to Unity. So the circle will be drawn from this enemy game object or from center of this enemy game object with yellow color with this much of radius, but we can adjust it right over here. It's totally up to you. So I'm gonna make the radius something like 7. I guess 7 it's pretty fine, so I'm gonna do something like 8. 8 seems pretty good. So let's select the console in the bottom, and let's click on this hit button, sorry, play button in the top. Click on that, so the game will be played. And once we collide with this circle of this enemy game object, we should able to see the message just gonna pop up right away. As you can see, once we collide with this circle that we created in our enemy game object, the message just getting pop up in the console says player attack. But once we don't collide with this circle, the message just getting stop popping up. And if I clear and try to collide with this circle of this enemy one more time, we can see indeed the message just getting pop up says player in attack range. So what we have to do right now, so let's double click that message to open up in quickly in Unity, sorry, in script. so instead of printing out message, what we want to do, we want to chase our player game object. Before we do that, we need to rotate our enemy game object in the direction player is looking. So in order to rotate, so let's remove this message. Instead, what we want to rotate, and we also want to chase our player game object. So in order to rotate, we need a direction. Basically, we need the direction, and in order to get the direction, you need to subtract your current position of enemy from this player position. So what we need player position, and we have to subtract our own position from this player position. So we will get the direction, and we will set that direction in the we are looking. So transform dot up means 1 unit in the y, and 0 in the x. So we have to set the transform dot up to this the direction. So let's go to our script, and over here, to get the direction, we have to subtract. So transform dot position means the current position of our enemy game object. We have to subtract that from our player position. So we need a reference of our player position. So let's go to top of our class. Let's make a public transform. Let's call this one means position. Let's call this one something like player position or player. So I'm gonna call it something like player, and close that off with semicolon. So we will subtract player dot position. Now we get the now we just got the direction. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna store that direction into a vector3 variable, because this transform dot position has 3 axes, as you can see, x, y, and z. And also this player transform gonna be x, y, and z. So we're gonna store into another vector3, because vector3 has 3 axes, which is x, y, and z. So we're gonna set something like direction. Let's set equal to this. So now we store it this direction. We just get the direction, and we store it this direction into this direction vector3 variable. Now what we're gonna do, we're gonna set this transform dot up and equal to our direction, and make sure you just close that up with semicolon. So basically what we're doing, transform dot up means 1 unit we looking up, and a 0 unit we just looking in the right, and we just set that position to our the direction. Just do that, and you're gonna able to see, you're gonna play around with this. Transform dot up means what direction we looking, or the enemy game object is looking. So we just set that direction equal to this direction. So control S to save your code, and if we just move over to Unity, and let's check that out. So we should able to see, once we collide with this circle, or we just get into this range of this enemy game object. So let's hit this play button. We should able to see enemy will look in the direction player is looking, or it will rotate itself, the player is looking, once we get inside of this circle or attack range. So the problem is that if I hit display, we need to drag our player transform. As you can see, none, it says empty. So what we have to do, select the player game object and drag it into that player transform. It says none. Now we have player transform means position. So I'm gonna clear the console one more time. So let's hit this play button in the top, and let's have a look on that. So we should able to see now that once we collide with this circle, we should able to see enemy will look in the direction player is going. As you can see, indeed we doing. So what we have to do right now, we need to chase. So once we collide with this circle, as you can see, this enemy game object need to chase our player game object. So I'm gonna unplay this, and now let's go to our script. So in order to chase, what we have to do, firstly we need our player position, but we do have, as you can see, we do have our player transform means position. To chase, we have to use this vector2 dot move towards function, and this function right over here will take the current position. So we're gonna pass our transform dot position means the current position of our enemy game object, and the second thing, it will take the target position or where we want to go. So we're gonna pass player dot position because we want to chase our player game object. And the third thing, it will take how much fast you want to, or you want to chase or want to go to that position or in that target position. So let's make a variable for our chase speed. So let's go to top of our class and let's make a public float, the public float, and let's call this one chase speed. And by default I'm gonna give something like 3 and let's pass right over here our chase speed, and make sure you just multiply with this time dot delta time to make frame rate independence, and make sure you just close that up with semicolon. And what we have to do, so this factor2 dot move toward function, as a first argument it will take the current position, so we pass our transform dot position means current position of our enemy game object, and as a second argument we just pass our player dot position. Basically we want to chase our player game object, so that's why. And the third thing, it will take the how much speed, how much fast, or how much speed you want to go to that point or to that target position. So we're gonna set equal to transform dot position. Let's set equal to this, and we do know that transform dot position right over here means the current position of our enemy game object, and we're setting equal to the point where we want to go. If hit is true, basically the player game object really collide with that circle of our enemy game object. So control S to save your code, and now let's move to Unity. We should able to see that. So just wait, and we can play around with this chase speed. Now if we hit this play button in the top, and let's have a look, once we get in this circle or collide with this, and we just gonna chase our player game object right after once we collide with this circle. So let's have a look. As you can see, indeed it's doing, but the problem is that it just stuck with our player game object. It seems like player stuck at enemy just stuck with our player position. So what we want to do once, so I'm gonna unplay this so make sure you just out of play mode. So once we are right, something like this player is right over here, or the distance between them is really some small number, so we want to stop our enemy game object right there. And after stopping our enemy game object, we want to shoot onto this player game object. Okay, so we want to do that, so I'm going to select the player game object. I'm going to drag it somewhere around here. So the once the distance between our player and enemy game object is too much close, then we need to stop our enemy game object to chase our player game object. We need to stop doing that. So in order to do that, let's open up, or let's go to our script, our enemy script, and over here we're chasing, as you can see. So before we chase, we need to check the distance between them. So we will use this if condition. So if vector2 dot distance, so let's use this, and this right over here will take two position or two vectors basically, and it will compare between them. So we're gonna pass our own position, which is transform dot position, and the second position we're gonna pass our player dot position, and the distance between we're gonna check if it's lesser than, if it's greater than something like retrieve distance, some smaller number. So let's go to top of our class, and let's make a something like public float. Let's call this one retrieve. If I'm misspelling that, I really apologize for it. So let's call this one retrieve distance, and I'm gonna set equal to something like 2.5 f. And now let's pass over here retrieve distance and make some curly brackets. So as you can see, if the distance between our player and our enemy and player position, if the distance between is still greater than retrieve distance, means some smaller number, and then we need to chase, else we're not gonna chase. So we're gonna put this line of code. So control X for cut and control V for paste. So we will chase in that situation. So as you can see, firstly we checking if it is true, means the player is really. So I'm gonna take my player game object, let's drag it somewhere around here. So if this player game object really collide with that circle, and we're checking right over here also. So if the distance between our enemy current position and player, if it's greater than retrieve distance or some smaller number, so in that situation we just chasing. Else what we have to do, once we are too much close, so we're gonna type else and make some curly brackets. So in that situation we need to shoot onto our player game object. So let's print out a message in the console for now. So debug.log and make some curly make first bracket, and let's something like shoot on player, shoot on player, and make sure you just close that up with semicolon. Control S to save your code. Now let's move to Unity. So once the distance between our enemy and player, if it's not greater than retrieve distance or some smaller number, so in that situation we just printing out message shoot on player. Basically enemy is now too much close our with our player game object. So let's have a look. So let's hit this play button in the top and let's take a look on that. Sorry, I'm just having the tea in the morning. And once we just get inside of this circle, and as you can see, once we are too much close, a shoot on player message just getting pop up, because the distance between our enemy current position and the player is not greater than retrieve distance or some smaller number. So that's why this else condition just getting pop up, because the distance it's not greater than retrieve. Now the distance is lesser than retrieve, so that's why this else condition getting pop up. And you can choose a bigger number. It seems like the gun is just overlapping on our play with our player game object, so we can choose retrieve distance a bigger number, something like we can choose 4. And now once we get out of this, and sorry, uh, as you can see, and now the it seems pretty good, but it would be too much good if you just choose a bigger number. So we can choose, make sure you just out of your play mode. So it whatever you do inside play mode, it will not be saved, so make sure you just do that. So we're gonna choose something like 5, and make sure you just go to overrides of this enemy game object and click on this apply all. So whatever changes we made into this enemy game object in hierarchy, it will be saved into that prefab of this enemy game object, means copy of that enemy game object will also gonna be saved whatever changes we made. So let's just click on this apply all, and now it's been saved. So I hope you get the idea of this, how you can just do that or chase your player game object into the top down game. And lastly, I want to thank all of you guys watching this tutorial from at the end, basically watching this complete tutorial of chasing player game object. And I want to thanks Rio for taking my membership on my Patreon. And lastly, thanks for watching this video.